among ourselves and invest in development. And with a vivid example to support this, dear judges, I'm talking about the existence of these regional economic communities. I'm talking about the East Africa community and the ECOWAS, that is Economic Community of West Africa States. These communities already have trade free among themselves, and now they are ready to move and to move forward and to expand the cooperation from the region to the continental level. And with a short statistic on this to end up this, my first argument is that in 2024, the East Africa trade generated almost 10.4 billion US dollar. And for the ECOWAS in 2023, it generated almost 25 billion US dollar. And this all shows that Africa is ready for Africa Free Continental Agreement. And this is the real fact that Africa has political will and economic foundation to implement the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. And to end up my argument, I have the second argument, that is the investment in infrastructure and technology. Dear judges, Africa is building the necessary infrastructures and digital system to make trade across the countries in a faster, cheaper, and more efficient way. Why am I speaking this? This is critical because the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement to succeed, it depends not only in the agreement, but also in a practical system that allow goods and services to move effectively across the border. And to prove this, dear judges, we are having this LAPSET corridor, that is Lamport of South Sudan and Ethiopia Transport Corridor. This is the underway project in East Africa. This project is designed to facilitate the transport and the trade across East Africa for the process of road, railway, and port link in Kenya, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. Also, we are having this underway project that is proceeding in Abidjan, that is Abidjan-Lagos Highway, which connects the 5 West Africa countries and they make the road transport safer and the faster way. So in saying that, dear judges, because we understand that without infrastructure like roads, ports, also the digital system, would it take too long to move to Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and finally we will fail to practice it. Now, this project existence, as I've mentioned above, it shows that Africa is preparing the practical groundwork for successful continental free trade area. And in statistical evidence on this, for the supporting of the infrastructure and technological investment for Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, we are having Africa Development Bank investment, whereas 25 US billion has been committed to infrastructure and the technology in supporting the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. You can see now how we are going to put this in practical and will be well implemented. And a good example is the presence, a good example to facilitate this, my argument is, we are having digital platform. Dear judges, this online platform for trade permits, customer clearance and payments, which are most used in Rwanda and Kenya. And this will enable for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement to be well accelerated and increase the faster of the trade in a cheaper way and more reliable way of encouraging business to trade among the cross-border. Because we understand that the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement will only succeed if goods and services can move smoothly across the countries. And this infrastructure and technological investment prove that Africa is creating the practice of environmental needed to implement the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement more effectively. I think we can all get a picture on how the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is in practice, and the countries are ready to ensure that the agreement is at work and together to create economic growth in all over the Africa countries. I think we are all the youth here. We need to expand the issue of jobs. We need to employ ourselves now. The agreement is on the table. Kindly let us work on it as the youth to ensure that the economic growth of our Africa states is well implemented and highlighted. Thank you very much.
All right, that was beautiful. Thank you very much. On to the next contestant, please.
Okay. The former Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Patrice Lumumba, once said, "Free trade across Africa sounds very promising, but without protecting our local industries, we risk becoming markets for others rather than producers ourselves." The ever young looking chair, wise and impartial panel of adjudicators, meticulous timekeeper, distinguished guests, colleague debaters, fellow students, ladies and gentlemen. A very good day to you all. My name is Noah Doche, a proud and eloquent principal speaker speaking unequivocally in opposition of the set motion before us today, quote and unquote, is Africa ready for an African continental free trade? Mr. Victor, may I plead your indulgence with expanse on certain key terms in the motions, and of course, as and when needed, exhibits shall be tendered to back our claims. According to the Oxford Learners Dictionary, the 10th edition to be precise, ready means fully prepared for an activity or purpose. According to the African Union, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a trade between African countries that aims to create a single unified market for goods and services across continents by eliminating tariffs and other trade barriers. All in all, the chair, the motion simply seeks to deposit that. Is the 54 sovereign states fully prepared to eliminate tariffs and other trade barriers amongst themselves? Well, the answer is very simple: no. And why? While the vision of a unified African market is noble, the continent is not yet equipped to implement this ambitious initiative effectively. The African Continental Free Trade Area was launched in 2018 and operationalized in 2021. The aim is to create a single market, not for goods, a single market for goods and services across the 54 African nations, potentially boosting intra-African trade by 52% by 2022. However, the reality on the ground paints a starkly different picture. Africa's infrastructure deficits, economic disparities, weak governance, and lack of industrial capacity makes the continent ill prepared for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I will substantiate these positions with facts, evidence to demonstrate why Africa is not ready for this agreement. And of course, as and when needed, exhibits shall be tendered to back my claims. The chair, the House. My premier point in opposition of the resolution is one: infrastructural deficiencies undermines effective implementation. I repeat, infrastructural deficiencies undermines implementations. Now, picture a farmer in a rural Kenya loading tomatoes onto a truck only for potholes, riddled roads, and crumbling bridges to turn a 2-day journey into a week long-term nightmare, spoiling the harvest and wiping out livelihoods. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa warns that the African Continental Free Trade Area could spike intra-African freight demand by 28% by 2030. Yet, over 60,000 kilometers of critical roads needs urgent upgrades. This isn't progress. This is a recipe for frustrations, leaving the continent's backbone broken, whilst goods and services rot and families starve. How can we dream of a borderless market when trucks carrying perishable goods and services rot at border posts for weeks? How can we integrate economics when the cost of transporting goods and services within Africa is often higher than importing from Asia or Europe? A question I leave for my opponent to answer. For me, I move to point 2, the chair, on equal distribution of benefits. Smaller or less developed countries might struggle to compete with more industrialized nations, potentially leading to unequal benefits. Africa has big differences in wealth between countries. The richest country, Seychelles, has a GDP per person of $17,127 US, while the poorest Burundi has only $160. This makes it hard for them to compete equally. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement might help some countries grow, but stronger countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya might get most of the benefits. This could leave smaller countries behind. Only for a few African countries have industries strong enough to compete freely. This could make it tough for others to catch up. Can we truly call it a free trade agreement when it benefits the strong at the expense of the weak? Why should smaller nations open their markets only to be overwhelmed by more industrialized neighbors? Mr. Kelvin, I am not saying that free trade agreement is not good, though. It is good, but it would be an impediment to the ideal administrations. The chair, the House. The reason why Africa is not ready for an African Continental Free Trade Agreement is loss of tariff revenue. Reducing or eliminating tariffs could lead to significant revenue losses for governments that rely on these taxes. Mr. Kelvin, imagine you are the finance minister for a smaller African country, and tariffs account to 20% of your... Hello? Mr. Kelvin, imagine you are the finance minister for a small country like Africa, a small African country, sorry, and the tariffs account to 20% of your government's revenue. You rely on these funds to provide essential services like healthcare and education. But then the African Continental Free Trade Agreement comes into play. The tariffs are reduced or eliminated. Meet Ghana, where tariffs are... Meet Ghana, where tariffs account to 15% of government's revenue. With African Continental Free Trade Agreements, tariffs might be eliminated. What will Ghana do? Let's be realistic here, Mrs. Tunes. Your job here is to tell us how ready the African Continental Free Trade Area is, not to list out its potentials and plenty theories. How many actions have been taken so far? A question I pose to you. For me, I move to point 4, the chair. Job losses devastate vulnerable workers. Mr. Victor, imagine your brother works in a textile company in Ethiopia. He has worked very hard for so many years, but suddenly the factory closes because it can't compete with cheaper imports. How will you feel? Workers like him will struggle to find new job. Families will suffer as income disappears. Is this what we are craving for as a country? No, I don't think so. Point 5, lack of industrial capacity and risks to local communities. I repeat, lack of industrial capacity and risks to local communities. African industrial base is underdeveloped, with manufacturing contributing to only 10% to the continent's GDP compared to 25% in Asia, according to the African database. Imagine you're a poultry farmer in Ghana. You work hard to raise chickens and sell them to your local markets. But then, cheaper chickens imports from Europe flood your market. You can't compete, and your business suffers. Local businesses and farmers might lose out to cheaper imports without industrial policies. African Continental Free Trade Agreements could lead to deindustrializations in weaker economies. Honorable judges, Africa's dream is a unified market is very, very inspiring. But the continent is not ready for an African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Infrastructural deficits, economic disparities, weak governance, and insufficient industrial capacity stand as formidable barriers. As Thomas Sankara warned, a continental trade agreement must not enrich only the few elites, whilst leaving our farmers and workers vulnerable to exploitations. Let us not rush into a system that could deepen inequality and dependency. Instead, Africa must first build its roads, strengthen its industries, and reform its governance. Only then can we truly embrace the African continental free trade area potential. I urge you to stand with me against this motion, for Africa's future demands preparation, not haste. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I had my network tripped off earlier. I noticed that earlier when Tionest spoke, she used a bit of her time and then you chipped in, Noah. And thankfully now, I think our judges are present. We have Mr. Kelvin here and Mr. Victor was here earlier, but I don't know if he's still here. But thank you very much. And now we are going to be giving a time span for each participant to give a rebuttal, throw questions towards your opponent and lay out your counter argument. So you can start first, Noah, being considering the fact that you took points earlier when Tionest was talking. So you can just go ahead right now.
All right, thank you very much. Now, rebuttals. Okay, whilst my opponent was talking, she made mention that the initiative of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is estimated to be having $3.4 trillion. This is just theories, and these are not facts that can be proven that they've really acquired this kind of amount of money. She also said that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is now preparing. And our main point here is that, is Africa ready for an African continental free trade area? Not to be preparing. Also, expose number 1. My opponents argued that the African continental free trade area is a transformative opportunity to boost intra-African trade. Now, imagine you are a market woman in Accra selling traditional crafts. The African Continental Free Trade Area promises to boost intra-African trade, but you are skeptical. Now, let's talk about the reality. Reducing tariffs will not automatically enhance trade. Transportation costs, poor infrastructure, and bureaucratic hurdles might all hinder this kind of trade. Africa countries have similar products, so competition might increase, not trade. Also, she also made mention of job creations. I completely understand where you are coming from. Imagine you are a young graduate in Africa, eager for a job. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement promises millions of new jobs, but let's examine the reality. Automations and technologies might create fewer jobs than expected. Many African countries lack the infrastructure and skills support to large-scale job creations. Most new jobs might be low-paying or informal, with few benefits. Women and youth may face barriers to accessing these opportunities because it requires a lot of skills and readiness. So with all this, do you still want to rally behind its readiness? What a shame. Now, she also made mention of economic growth. Young lady, don't be an enemy of progress. Imagine you are building your house in a stocky ground. It is crystal clear that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area promises 450 billion in economic growth, but the foundation is very weak. Only 36 countries have ratified the African Continental Free Trade Area, and fewer than 20 implemented customs framework. Intra-African trade still remains very low, around 15%. Projection assume that optimal conditions, but reality is far from it. Without strong infrastructure and harmonized policies, growth will be very slow. Proverbs chapter 27 verse 5 says, "An open criticism is better than a hidden love." The chair, the house. With all these cogent points and meaningful rebuttals made, I am well convinced and can strongly conclude that Africa is not ready for an African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Noah. It's very, very, this is very, very serious. You really mean business. Madam Nima, I hope you're there. I hope you're with us. Hello, Madam Nima. Okay.
Yes.
I do.
Hello.
Okay. Mr. Victor and Mr. Kelvin, I hope you guys are with us. You are seeing how hotted it's getting and how serious it is. Because we'll be expecting your final decisions by the time this is done. And then, Madam Nima, you have the ground. You can go ahead with your rebuttals. Madam Nima, you vanished on us. Hello. Honest.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, you can go ahead.
Okay, for that battering. Okay, thank you very much, my fellow youth, for the good questions on my side, especially. Thank you very much, because even your argument was a challenge, but you provide a way on supporting this motion that Africa is really ready for Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. I'm very congratulated for you as the youth and ready to ensure that Africa states are really ready to ensure the Continental Free Trade Agreement is well implemented. For the first question you asked on the issue of on generation of the jobs in Africa. My fellow colleagues, let me tell you that Africa Continental Free Trade Area is there, first of all, to remove the tariffs and the trade barrier between Africa countries and allow goods and services to be moved freely across the border. And for the issue of the trade, is there to ensure that the trade is well in increase and demand for the production, logistics, transport, and the contribution and distribution that will allow in the lives of the creation of the millions of the new job to people. So let me tell you that you should not worry on the issue of the job. As you said, that the job will be lost. Here, the job will be well created because the market will be there, and the way youth will be grabbing different opportunities that will be present as long as the goods will be moving from different all across the African continent. And the issue for the you explained on the issue of you asked on the issue of the lack of the industry capacity and something like that. But let me tell you that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is there to encourage countries to process their raw material and instead of exporting them in the low form, because this will enable a shift from extracting to manufacturing, which will create industrial jobs. And in the sectors, including of agro-processing, textile, pharmaceutical, and machinery. So let me tell you that the industries will not be in low, or will the industry capacity will not be in lowered. Instead, will be very increased, and all in all will be well industrialized, and the value in addition. And you also explained in the issue of yes, you also explained in the issue of the issue of the infrastructure the issue of the infrastructure on basis of the argument, also in the question you asked in one of the question. Let me tell you that the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is unified market that almost of 1.3 billion of people will lead to the rise of the GDP. I think this is the one of the questions that you asked about the GDP of the 3.4 US dollar trillion. Let me tell you that as I remove the statistical evidence about the East Africa trade and the ECOWAS trade, I said that for the East Africa trade, it's almost generated US dollar 10.4 billion in the year 2024. And for the ECOWAS, it generated 25 US dollar billion. And this is just for some countries. Just imagine now for the whole African continent, how the GDP will be. And in statistical evidence of this is that the GDP will be almost 3.4 trillion US dollar for this Africa free continental trade. So let me tell you that you shouldn't worry about this. And all in all, as the youth, I would love to advise you not going against this, not only to go against this, should widen your mind and see on how you can explore and grab different opportunity that will enable you, even your community, in a thriving out, especially in the issue of the economy. And by finalizing, I have just a few points, few questions to ask my colleague in opposing side. First of all, I would love you to answer me in the area of industry capacity. Let me tell you that my colleague, for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, if many Africa countries still depend heavily on importing manufacturing goods and have weak industry bases, how can you say Africa okay, sorry a bit. Okay, I would love to ask you for the issue of the industry capacity. If many Africa countries still depend heavily on importing manufactured goods and have weak industrial bases, how can you say Africa is led to compete fairly under AFC? The challenging question is prove that the African industry can survive openly in the competition. And the second question I would love to ask you on the issue of the job security. With the free trade likely
Hello, Mr. Honest. We can't hear you right now. I don't know if it's the network or I don't know, probably there's a bad reception. But currently, we've heard you support the motion, and we've also heard Mr. Noah oppose the motion, and you've also done rebuttals. I don't know if there is anything our judges, that is in person of Mr. Kelvin Ocheng and Mr. Victor Egbo. I don't know if there's anything they want to add. If there's anything they want to add, I would appreciate if they do that now. And even if there is nothing to add, I would appreciate if you both could just introduce yourself to the house, please.
Hello.
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 Hello, we can
Yes,
hear
sorry.
you both.
Yes, my phone was being interrupted with the phone from my mother.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, I have just a few questions to ask my colleague, the one who was opposing this motion. First of all, I would love to understand on how, as he has said that on the issue of lack industry capacity, how evidence are you that African countries or Africa states are really lack industry capacity, as you said on your arguments? And also, can you provide a deep details with little example on how Africa will lose the job once we'll be having this Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement? As I said before, this agreement will lead to the creation of huge number of jobs to the youth, and most of the youth will be ready to grab and explore the opportunity within it. So kindly provide me statistical and the examples on how job will be lost and on how Africa state lack industry capacity. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I talked about lack of industrial capacity and risks to local economies in my fifth argument. So what I'm trying to tell you is that Africa lacks industrial capacity. Looking at the statistics based here, manufacturing contributes to only 10% to the continent's GDP compared to Asia. Asia has 25%. That means their industrial capacity is very higher than ours. So now, when we bring in this African Continental Free Trade Agreement, these other countries from these people from other countries will come into our countries to come and exploit our people because their GDP is very high. And even though we have a lot of less developed countries here in our country, and they are not fully prepared or developed to compete with this type of agreements here. So now, if, for example, right now, chicken imported in around in Europe or Asia is very much cheaper than here. So a local community or a local economy who is trying to feed his or her family, open a poultry farm. That is what I said. Imagine you're a poultry farmer in Ghana and you have worked so hard. Then now you have this one, what's crumple? Cheaper chickens imported from Europe flood your market. You can't compete, and your business will definitely do what? It will definitely suffer. And that is what I'm saying about the local industry. Our local industry capacity is very, very poor, and you have to concentrate on that instead of concentrating on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And also about the job creation. Yes, when the African Continental Free Trade Agreement have promised us a lot of a lot of jobs creations. Okay, and these job creations, I don't think it can be in existence because it will do this thing. It will reduce a lot of people's potentials and skills. People who don't have the skills cannot be employed in those kind of field, and people who are already employed at the borders working will lose their job. As simple as that. And that is the reason why I insist that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement shouldn't be in existence, or is not ready for a free trade agreement. Thank you.
Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
You both have given quite an argument on both sides, from the supporting aspect and the opposing aspect. I've tried to reach out to the judges. I was hoping they would be able to say a thing or two, but I think they probably can't.
Hello? I can.
Hello?
I'm here. There's Victor Igbo on the line.
Okay. It's nice to have you with us. So basically, we've really spent quite enough of. In fact, the way we were going to do it, having the 15 minutes and the 5 minutes, you guys just had fun debating and going at each other, which was quite good to see. But now we would have to come to the end of that and have the judges say a thing or two if they have to, so we can move on to the next phase. Mr. Victor, Mr. Kelvin, please, if there's anything you want to say, could you do that now, please? Thank you very much.
Okay. First off, good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
I want to thank Emmanuel for reaching out to me. Is the major reason why I was able to make the event. I wasn't aware of this event, honestly, so I had to put myself together on such short notice. But regardless, I also want to salute the two contestants for their efforts. I know it's not an easy task, but they were able to marshal their points and prove themselves worthy. Debates of this nature, sometimes when you have a topic like this, it puts one opponent or one person at a strong disadvantage because of the way the topics can be skewed or framed. But regardless, it calls for strong analytical prowess and research to be able to come out of whatever challenge you find yourself. I want to commend Neiman for that, because even while they were debating whether Africa is ready for free continental trade agreement, our network was serving as a strong impediment. So you see that the situation was actually, making the point of for her opponent. But strong salute to you for at least coming up on top. I also want to thank Noah for putting up a good show. And thank you all. And thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, sir. It's nice to have you, and we really appreciate the kind words. And like you said, we actually enjoyed them going at each other. And considering the fact that it's a topic given, not chosen, they both tried and did their best to deliver on that. I know that if we were not even going to stop them, they are ready to go all day, all day with this argument. Mr. Kelvin, is Mr. Kelvin there?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, good afternoon, or everyone here.
Yeah, good day, sir.
Yeah, I've noted down the debate. It was quite a learning engagement. Actually, I picked 1 or 2 points from the debaters, which they were quite interesting in knowing how we as African we can shape our trade lines and how we can change the narrative of growing as Africans rather than being over dependent. Yes, what drew me much is their research skills, because I could see the extent to which they have garnered some knowledge on knowing on various occasions, despite the opposing side being more critical on his objective, yeah, which was quite commendable. Yeah, for me, was a well debate. And I give the thumbs up for our debate. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Kelvin. It's nice to also have you with us. And I believe we've heard from both participants. We've gathered their points. We've seen how or gotten to learn a thing or two from them. And I hope in no time we'll be getting a feedback from the judges in the group on how to proceed with this, what the scores are, and what we have to do next. For now, I think we'll be ending with the team 1, and then we'll have to move on to the team 2. I don't know if those that are supposed to be for team 2 are present with us right now. If you guys are present, could you please signify? I think we are supposed to have Onyekachi, Monday Francis, and Angelo Achiampong. Both participants present with us. Hello. Okay, well, in absence of the participants, I think we'll probably have to call it a day. And the results as to the debates that we just witnessed now or just listened to will be sent later. I hope you guys have a good day or good night, wherever or whatever it might be, as at the time zone where you are. And goodbye, everyone.
I am present. I am present here. I'm just present here. But my
Hello, sorry.
co-debater is
Hello.
I'm here, but my co-debater is not present at the moment.
Okay, sorry, that's Angelo, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Consider the fact that your opponent is not present right now, we won't be able to proceed. And like I was saying earlier, I think we might have to call it a day. Probably, I don't know if we would have to reschedule. I don't know how it's going to be yet until it is further decided. But for now, we won't be able to just keep everybody on the call. So anything that is going to be done would be communicated later on in the group. I hope you understand me. Hello, are you there? Okay.
Yes, please, I'm here.
Okay then. So I bid everyone farewell, and everyone hope you have a good rest of the day. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Yeah.
A pleasure.
Okay, now. What exactly is that?